Hi, I'm Patrick, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you very much, Jacob. Yeah. So I guess I can go a little bit into. So before this meeting, I asked how I was supposed to do this, and I wasn't sure. But I guess I want to talk about spirituality. So first, I want to give you a little bit of brief of my childhood and some reasons why spirituality was going to be a problem for me when I got here. Um, so when I was a kid, I was touched in a reform school for 3 years. My mom was forced to send me there. I'm from Philadelphia. I was very problematic. Kept getting kicked out of elementary school for fighting. You couldn't look at my sister wrong. I felt like, my dreams were like, is my sister too close to the ledge? And I couldn't get to her. Like I was always this like very tense kid. Like something was going to go wrong. I was embarrassed of my parents because they were heroin addicts. I wanted my parents to be someone they weren't, and I was embarrassed about them. So I always had this feeling where I wanted other people to perceive me for someone different. I never could be myself, and that was from a very early age. Then I got touched, and then, I kept getting kicked out of schools, and I couldn't realize why I could do good schoolwork. But as soon as the schoolwork ended, because I got through it fast academically, because they put me in these special ed classes where general education was very simple to me, I would be bored, and I didn't have nothing better to do but cause problems. That's what I did. Or I would try to help people, and that's why I say that right now because there's a reason why I'm going to say that. I would always try to help the one that was like slow in my class, um, until I just got unfocused and I just got myself in trouble. With that, got me put away, and got what happened to me, and things led from there down, like my parents being addicts, and being in Kenston, Philadelphia. I wanted to be a drug dealer, so I skipped that and I went into being a drug user. um, I wasn't a drinker because it made me spin, so I really couldn't drink. I used a different form of the bottle, because everybody else drank, so in order for me to be in bars, I had a beer in front of me for the whole night, and other forms of alcohol took play in my life, along with a lot of overdoses. And the reason I say all that is because God was to blame for everything. Um, yeah, like why would he do that? My questions were, who was it? Like I grew up Irish Catholic. Um, so like there was always God forced on me. It's funny, I grew up an altar boy. I received my sacraments, did my CCD, and I did all that. But like I said, I was a big kid. I didn't last too much in Catholic school. I get kicked off a football team, so they would just put me right out, right into the general education system in Philadelphia, which made it worse. But I always wanted to be liked. So in order to get liked, I couldn't go around spinning because of the alcohol. Um, so I did everything else on the side because I felt like I had to at least be messed up for other people to see me that way. And I thought that was the way in. That was my way to be friends or to fight. It got me sent away. Um, it took on a very burden, a heavy trauma. My mom thought it was her fault. She buried herself. She buried it. I was drugged through a major trial through my teenage years, which was prolonged about 7 years due to a lawsuit. And then they gave somebody that was poor growing up money, that was in a heavy drug addiction, at the time. And between me and my mother and my father being heroin addicts all together now at this point, we were at the bar. I stayed on the recliner. Everything went the way it went. And I didn't believe in God. There's no if, ands, or but. I blame God for everything. Um, and then I came to I had an intention to come. First of all, it was 6 degrees in Kensington, Philly under the L. And I was like, damn, it is freezing. And there was an overdose in front of me, and I kept asking myself, why am I a part of this? Um, how am I a part of what's going on right now? This is post COVID, and I was looking around Kensington, Philadelphia, and there's about 250 heroin addicts, crack addicts, alcoholics under the L. It was raining, snowing, sleeting, muddy from just nastiness on the streets. And I'm watching it like go by me as and I was like, how am I a part of this? And I was like, you know what? Florida seems like a good idea. After time and time of trying to get sober in AA up there. And it just wasn't working. I couldn't get more than 30 days. By then, paranoia had set in from my over and over usages. And even when I would get 90 days sober, paranoia would creep into the rooms. One coincidence would meet another coincidence from another coincidence. And then paranoia from being on the last drunk would set me off my rocker. It was like I couldn't get past the hump of still being paranoid. Um, it just devastated all my relationships. Everyone that I did thought I loved. I realize now I probably don't know what love is, but um, it just ruined everything. Everyone I touched, looked at, if you even knew my name, you were probably in trouble. But that wasn't my heart, and I knew inside it wasn't. And I can remember that from like helping the kid in school. I have always had a helping body and a helping bone inside me. I'm the one you find on the street that gives everything out on the street with this thing that commits suicide, but it really is like the helping people always made me feel good. Like I was doing something right, maybe to like neglect the shitty shit I was doing or justify it maybe. And then I came to Florida and then I came down here and I got to Orlando on a Greyhound bus, going through DTs and being sick on the bus because that was my thought process. Get on a bus. It takes 72 hours to get down there. We'll hope for a layover in one of these towns. By the time I get down there, I won't have any symptoms. Oh, and by the way, let's use a very high energy speed to help me get away from that. That was going to cause chaotic paranoia on a bus the whole way down here, going through sickness. So I get down to Orlando, and the sunlight on its own had like took depression just to. I mean, I can say for a lot. A lot of my depression, that sunlight, it felt like I remember like letting my jacket go in Orlando. Now this is funny because it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was like 80 degrees and it was 6 degrees still, and I didn't know it got chilly down here. And I let my jacket like drop to the ground, and I kept walking away from it. Dude, it was like 30 degrees that night in Orlando. I was pissed. I was so mad that it was so cold in Florida. Like, I did not come here for this shit. But I continued to go south, and I ended up being in treatment in like maybe like 12 hours on my way back towards Daytona. Um, of getting into Orlando. Somehow I met a guy on a bus. I started talking recovery. I told him my intentions. I ended up going into a recovery place called Aspire. It was a government funded. I didn't have insurance down here. They put me in it, but I just wasn't ready. I just could not realize why I just couldn't get it out of my head. So I ended up going to a treatment center from there down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I walked right out of there when I got down there. It was real nice. Had a pool. I'm like, yeah, this is a scam. My mind told me they put me here because they want me to be comfortable. They're trying to control me. My paranoia was still like lit in my head. And I walked away from there. I'm like, this is Fort Lauderdale. I got to be able to find everything I want to find. I ended up leaving there. I stole a tent. I befriended a cop. She let me put my tent on the intercoastal and by the water's edge. She told me she didn't want me to use drugs. I told her briefly my history, and she took a liking to me. And let me pop a tent up in like a busy intersection area. It was weird. Happened. So for 4 months, I stayed comfortably homeless in the middle of Fort Lauderdale plantation. Um, and it was really easy, but there were some things going on with me. Like this cop would ask me, like, why are you homeless? Like, you wear collared shirts and you have a shoe rack in your tent, and like, how are you homeless? And I used to say, God got me right where He want me, and that was my excuse. And then I started like seeing the world from an outside perspective of myself, like being high, being in the tent, not really talking to nobody, um, standing at a 7-Eleven bumming change. I was like, I got to get my life together. So I remember the cliche in AA that if nothing changes, tomorrow was going to be the same. I had my head on my guitar because I used it as a pillow so it wouldn't get stolen. And I just said, if it's not going to change from me, it's going to be the same tomorrow. I'm going to have to sleep on this fucking guitar again tomorrow so nobody takes it. At least I feel it getting taken. And I got up and I walked away from the guitar and I went into a psych ward. And that was my journey here to Port St. Lucie. And I told God while I was in that treatment center, um, what I do for a business I was doing in the treatment center, and I realized that it helped people. It's cutting hair. I'm licensed due to the penitentiary. Um, so I started seeing it help people. So I kind of made this deal with God, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go make it cost efficient for people in recovery. And I'm going to drag AA into my barber's chair. And I came down here and I started a mobile company, and I told myself I would get into step work. And Jacob's my sponsor. And the first meeting I went to, it was a bike club, an MC club called Alternatives. And it was on a Sunday night, and I cried at that meeting, and I said I needed a sponsor. And he approached me and said, you know, some things, and I agreed, and I told him that I would call him. The next Tuesday we met, and I think because I'm such a great liar and a vivid liar. The first thing I told this guy during the first Tuesday we met was that my parents were bikers. They were in this club, and they were tough, and and everything was like to make him. And I was completely lying with these really, really vivid details. Like they flowed out of my tongue like it was so natural, right? But I remember him leaving that night, and he had me do like a 10-step 101. And I was like, damn, lying's one of the questions. And I'm like, I lied. And I was like, you know what? You didn't come down here and say or do that. And like for once in my life, I figured I was going to take the credit for being an idiot and not trying to be a fraud. So the next day I called him at 5 while I was cleaning my scooters, and I told him I lied to him. And I told him why. He told me it wasn't the right thing to do. It was wrong, but this is who you've been. This is what you came here like. It's not something that's going to just change overnight, but we're going to, work on it to change it. And then we went from there, and that was like a big pivotal part of me getting sober. Now I can be myself. Now I can tell this man a lot of stuff. So we started doing step work, and we get to 4, and I do my 4, and he tells me where I was scared and where I was, my own person. And he tells me about, FCYPAA and stuff. And that stuff was like a blank check in my head at that point. And then I tried to steer my own ship after my 4-step, and I had a relationship come down from Philadelphia that I tried to hang on to because now I'm sober, right? So I had her come down here, and we went and swam with dolphins, and they pulled us around the lake at the Cove up in Disney. And I come back that night, and the same anger that I had when I was up north wanted to push me out the door at this hotel. And I walked away from her. And then I had to call my sponsor, and I had to call his sponsee brother, and I couldn't breathe. I thought it was my fault. Like, why am I this way? They had me do a meditation, and the next day was the induction, the FCYPAA, for the host committee to throw this convention that we're having at the Hutchinson next September. And I was like, damn, what better way to just go bury myself in AA next day? And then next Saturday, I went in there with 3 months sober, no time requirement to take any heavy burden of a position. And at this point, I was doing meetings. I was doing my step work. My sponsor's well connected in FCYPAA. And I don't think that's the reason. I think everyone knew who I was at that point that was on that committee. And not the advisory, but the committee itself that was being voted in. And they nullified from a year down to 3 months the position that I took as a service chair. And you know what that did? That put me so knee deep in the service. Now I already did a lot. Like I was a house manager at this point. That same weekend, I became a house manager of a recovery house. I completed my program. My business was going good. I go into multiple treatments to cut hair now. Like I was so in AA and so involved that this was going to be even like more fun. I found out that young people of AA, and I'm 43. I'm not even that young, but I wholeheartedly believe that you are where you are when you started using, because I am just like a kid at some of these events. Um, but I've been to an event every month since 9 months ago, to raise funds for a convention where hundreds of people are going to show up and do a countdown on their clean time. I didn't get sober to get bored. And I say all that stuff now so I can say this. The spirituality part is, so now that I'm involved in FCYPAA, when I get done a FCYPAA event, I always thank God, like, wow, look where I am now from a 10. I went to Orlando last week, um, with another female that's in Sarah's name, and another host committee member to go to another event up in Orlando. And I was up there, and I remember telling myself, thank you, God, right? But recently, I have to do another 4-step because I have lacked in my meetings. I started working in treatment. They hired my dumbass in a treatment center as a tech. Who the fuck? I robbed a bank in 2000, certified bank robbery. Like it was by verbal demand. No one got hurt in Philadelphia, but I had to turn myself in on it. Like, how could I even get into a job like that? And I was burying myself with work where it's not service work, it's work now. I'm paid to do it. And I was missing meetings. And then I got a relationship. And then I was steering in between all this other stuff to try to get to the her to satisfy the outside for the inside. Um, and I called my sponsor and I started to actually tell him about this stuff. Like I was supposed to be at the Super Bowl. I had to make a big decision not to go to the Super Bowl Sunday. Um, my sister got 5 tickets because I'm sober. And I had to get honest with her, with one of my program directors on a conference call, and they all thought it was a bad idea. So she sat in. I never would have made a decision like that. But the last Super Bowl I relapsed at, in Minnesota. So I didn't get to go to that, and there'll be plenty more Super Bowls to come. But these are the decisions that God is allowing me to, like, He puts it in my intuition. Patrick wouldn't think like this. I would never think like this. I would never think to call my sponsor and tell him I'm struggling, because you know how embarrassing it feels to be through the steps, then to go and ask my sponsor, I think I need to do my step work again with you. Of course, he's a sponsor and has probably been through this situation, so we're doing another fourth. And I've been writing and I've been finding out that all the fears that's really fear based, because all the fears that I'm writing down are all done by what I've been doing. Everything I haven't been doing, like getting away from God, not having a good prayer life, definitely not going to get in the sponsees that I'm supposed to go get. And I have one now who just did some book work with me, and it felt so accomplishing to get in the book with someone. I'm going to another event that had from the YPAA, coming up, a Fire and Ice talent show. Um, my opinion matters with this YPAA. Like when you get in these committees, like they have Zoom meetings and they have constant contact with each other. They have group chats with 500 people on something on them. Like there's so much going on. Like these to me, they look like geniuses, especially like our chair and our co-chair and Jacob. And like they do so many things that like I would think a brainiac would take to do. But they've been doing it for years. You know what I mean? This is like, and I'm like coming into where we're hosting a convention. Do you know how cool it feels to be a part of something like that? Coming from 4 months fucking in a tent, looking at in pornography on a phone because you want to be alone, you don't want to be around people. Like that's just insanity, like to me, to think like that. But I didn't do much. I really didn't really do much, and I'm still sick. I can tell you right now. I know. I just seen all the people that are just coming in. I'm just coming in too. But when I was where 14 days was, I also wanted to be where I was, where I'm sitting right now, just with the time part, because I'm still sick. I still lie. I don't steal. I don't cheat. I try to be as respectful as I can, but I get caught in line. But I'm willing to not lie though. But I catch myself in like mid fucking phrase, and I'm lying and I don't even realize it. And it's not even for no reason. Usually it has a good intention. But because of all the I do collaboratively, and Vicky Paul has stuck me in the middle of service. Part of my description of my job, and I have a minute and a half left, is I have to go to intergroup, I have to go to area, I have to go to district, and I have to find events that they are having so I can set up registration tables at their events. That puts me in the middle of AA. That gets me connected to people that have been sober for a while. That has made me have so many contacts. When people call my phone, you would have never thought that I'd be friends with people like that. I say the word John. You know what I mean? I say the word fuck you probably 30 times a day, at least. That's an average. And I'm in a corporate world and I still drop the F bomb while there's patients and clients around. I still feel like I'm a client when I'm at work. Like, I still feel like the person that might be in here that has 14 days. I'm that much more healed than you are. All I do is have a little more sober time. But I can tell you this in my last 30 seconds. You might be uncomfortable now, but I'm not as uncomfortable as I was when I had 14 days, 28 days, 1 month, 43 days. That uncomfortability subsided so drastically. Like it has truly, truly. And that's all I do is follow direction and be willing to keep growing. And that's all I got.